During the filming of The Last Supper in The Chosen, something happened that no one expected. Jonathan Roumie, the actor who portrays Jesus, suddenly broke down in the middle of the scene. The entire set froze. "I couldn't go on," Roumie later revealed, still visibly moved. "It felt like he was there." The crew, stunned and speechless, fell into silence. The atmosphere shifted completely. The director couldn't even say cut. What began as acting transformed into something deeply spiritual. But what really happened that day? Was it a collective surge of emotion or a genuine miracle? It was supposed to be just another day of filming, another carefully rehearsed, technically flawless scene in The Chosen. But on that particular day, during the shooting of The Last Supper in Season 5, something entirely unscripted took place. A space once ruled by cameras, lights, and marks on the floor suddenly became a stage for what many described as a supernatural encounter. Jonathan Roumie, the man who brought Jesus to life for millions around the world, was already used to emotionally demanding scenes. But according to him, nothing compared to that moment. It was as if God himself was directing the scene, Eddie said. And it wasn't just a metaphor. Those who were there insist the atmosphere on set changed abruptly, as if a wave of sacred reverence had descended upon everyone. The Last Supper is one of the most anticipated and spiritually charged moments in the Christian story. Perhaps that's why the tension in the air felt almost tangible. Every movement, every glance, every pause seemed slower, yet heavier with meaning. Time itself felt altered. Crew members later recalled that from the very first takes. Something was different. The silence between lines wasn't empty. It was full of a presence no one could explain. "I can't put into words what I felt," one production assistant said, asking to remain anonymous. It wasn't acting. It was something else. He admitted he wasn't a religious man, but he left the set shaken. And he wasn't the only one. The usual chatter between takes, full of technical instructions, was replaced by moments of quiet contemplation. The crew seemed hesitant to resume, as if speaking too soon would break something sacred. Dallas Jenkins, the creator and director of the series, watched it all unfold in silence. Even as a meticulous professional known for his technical precision, he realized something that day had slipped beyond his control, and he allowed it. "I didn't give many directions during that sequence," Jenkins said later. "Sometimes I just let the scene flow. It was as if the set had ceased to be a film stage and, for a few fleeting moments, became a holy space. Those timeless words, 'This is my body, this is the cup of the new covenant,' took on a weight no script could capture." Crew members said it was impossible to repeat the takes the same way. Expressions changed, eyes filled with tears. Even the silences spoke volumes. "It felt like we were all part of something much bigger than a TV series," a sound technician recalled. "There were no special effects, no lights shining down from heaven. And yet, everyone felt something impossible to ignore. No amount of rehearsal could have manufactured that moment." Roumie ended the day visibly exhausted, not physically, but spiritually drained. In later interviews, he admitted that the experience left a deep mark on his personal faith journey. And it was only the beginning of a series of moments that would transform not just the scene, but everyone involved. It was in that highly technical, tightly controlled environment that something slipped out of human hands and touched the divine. A miracle, a shared emotional awakening, or simply artistic sensitivity pushed to its limits. Whatever the explanation, one thing was clear to everyone there that day. Something sacred had happened. For most actors, taking on a role like this demands script study, intense rehearsals, and emotional surrender. But that day on The Chosen set, it demanded something more, something not of this world. For Jonathan Roumie, portraying Jesus in The Chosen was far more than acting. It became a profound, daily spiritual journey, one that was often beautiful, but also painful. The Last Supper scene in Season 5 demanded from him a level of inner preparation unlike anything he had ever experienced. In recent interviews, Roumie made it clear it wasn't enough to look like Jesus. He needed, in some mysterious way, to empty himself so that something divine could shine through his performance. "I needed constant spiritual support," he admitted. "People were praying for me every day. My spiritual director stayed with me through the entire shoot." This wasn't exaggeration. Before every scene, Roumie would spend moments in silent prayer, seeking absolute focus and avoiding all distractions on set. His preparation didn't start the night before filming. It had been years in the making. Since the earliest seasons, he had followed a disciplined spiritual routine. But the weight of the Last Supper was different. He knew he was about to depict the exact moment when, according to the Gospels, Jesus revealed the meaning of his sacrifice and instituted the Eucharist, a sacred act central to the faith of billions around the world. "I wasn't just acting," Roumie said, his eyes filling with tears. "It felt like a spiritual responsibility to convey what billions of people hold as absolute truth." Jonathan often confessed he didn't feel worthy of the role, and perhaps that humility was what drove his deep commitment. He fasted, meditated, and stayed off social media during critical periods of filming. "I didn't want to contaminate myself with trivial things," he said during a fan event. "It was like I needed to keep a constant connection with God, or else it would all fall apart." The emotional and spiritual pressure was so intense that on some days, he had to isolate himself from the cast to recover. But what truly stood out wasn't his effort, it was why he did it. Jonathan knew that in that scene. His words would be more than dialogue. They would be a human attempt to give form to something sacred. Jesus wasn't merely saying goodbye to his disciples. He was sealing an eternal covenant. How could anyone portray that without slipping into theatricality? How could he keep reverence without losing authenticity? Those questions haunted him as he stepped onto the set, carrying both weight and faith in equal measure. Roumie didn't want to impress, he wanted to serve. And for that, his preparation came not from acting techniques, but from prayer, surrender, and silence. An invisible battle fought off camera, but one that radiated through the lens. He wasn't the only one changed by that atmosphere. The entire environment around him began to shift. Cast and crew alike started to realize that the moment required more than professionalism. It required spiritual understanding. That realization led Dallas Jenkins and the production team to pursue an even deeper immersion, to experience the Last Supper not as a symbolic dinner, but as a living part of an ancient Jewish tradition. What happened next brought everyone back to the roots of faith. Before any dialogue was filmed, the chosen production team organized a very special experience. A Passover meal led by a Jewish rabbi, Jason Sell, an expert in Old Testament rituals. This was not a classroom lecture. It was a real evening, complete with all the traditional elements of the Jewish Passover: the lamb, the unleavened bread, the bitter herbs, the 4 cups of wine, and the ceremonial reading of the Haggadah. Elizabeth Tabish, who portrays Mary Magdalene, described it as a journey through time. "For the first time," she said, "I understood what the disciples must have felt that night. The goal was simple: to reconnect the Christian moment to its Jewish origin." The impact was immediate. Many cast members admitted they had never fully grasped the Last Supper as part of a much older, sacred tradition, and that realization changed everything about their approach to the scene. Dallas Jenkins summed it up perfectly. Jesus didn't break from the past. He fulfilled what had been promised since the Exodus. That immersion helped everyone prepare, not just as actors, but as people touched by something larger than themselves. They weren't merely depicting history, they were reliving the bridge between 2 covenants, the Lamb of the Exodus and the Lamb of God. But what began as a historical exercise soon became something no one could have predicted. During 6 days of filming, the set was overtaken by a presence that no script could capture. Lines flowed naturally, gestures felt guided. Yet what moved everyone most were the things not in the script: the tears that appeared without warning, the silences that felt like prayers, and the glances that spoke more than any rehearsed line. Jonathan Roumie, who had embodied Jesus for years, was visibly shaken multiple times. "There were moments," he confessed, "when I simply couldn't speak. The spiritual weight of the scene, it paralyzed me inside." It wasn't emotional fragility. It was as if he were truly feeling what Jesus felt on that night of farewell. Noah James, who plays Andrew, described it this way: "The emotions came spontaneously, without any rehearsal. It felt like something beyond us was guiding everything." That sense of something greater spread across the entire crew, even among those who considered themselves skeptical. One of the most surprising testimonies came from a sound technician known for his disbelief. After a particularly intense day, he quietly approached Dallas Jenkins and said, "I've never believed in any of this, but today, I felt something I can't explain." That was enough to leave the entire team silent, exchanging knowing looks. They didn't fully understand what was happening, but they knew it was real. And that invisible, yet tangible presence began to transform the entire atmosphere of the set. Even the most seasoned professionals found themselves unprepared for what had taken hold. Dallas Jenkins, usually in complete control of every technical detail, admitted he experienced moments of total surrender. There were times I couldn't even say cut, as he confessed. I just stood there in silence, trying to process what I'd just witnessed. He wasn't alone. Camera operators, producers, makeup artists, all spoke of an inexplicable sense of reverence. It was as if, despite the cables, cameras, and lights, the set itself had become sacred ground. Even the usually noisy backstage area fell silent between takes. The entire space turned into a kind of quiet sanctuary. George Harrison's Xanthus, who portrays John, described it best. It felt like a form of silent worship, and for a brief moment in time, the boundary between art and faith disappeared, leaving only awe. "I forgot I was acting," Jonathan Roumie later said. "It was as if we were all taking part in something spiritual. Acting gave way to experience, and fiction gave way to faith." Something was being revealed on that set, and everyone knew it. This wasn't just another scene. It was a moment that would carry far beyond the cameras. After the filming of The Last Supper ended, Jonathan Roumie didn't rest. He traveled straight to the National Eucharistic Congress, one of the largest Catholic gatherings in the United States. The invitation had been extended a year earlier, but the timing, coinciding exactly with the end of filming, felt anything but accidental. When Roumie stepped onto that stage, he wasn't the same man. He carried the spiritual weight of a week spent reliving, day after day, the moment when Jesus gave his body and blood out of love for humanity. "I was literally living the Eucharist, not as a symbol, but as a daily experience," he told the audience, his voice trembling. "And it changed me completely." The crowd listened in reverent silence, because in that moment, it wasn't just an actor speaking. It was a man transformed. His words, his eyes, even his posture reflected something real, something that went far beyond what had been filmed. Jonathan admitted he would never be the same again, and neither would the crew. "I thought I was portraying Jesus," he said softly. "But that week, it was Jesus who taught me how to live." What was meant to be a scene in a script became a turning point in the personal faith of many who were there. Yet, as with every powerful experience, not everyone accepted it. Some critics dismissed the accounts, claiming the cast was romanticizing their emotions, that it was nothing more than a collective trance fueled by the symbolic weight of the scene. Articles on Christian culture websites and skeptical forums suggested that the story had been exaggerated for publicity. Others argued that, while moving, it was only natural for actors to feel deeply when depicting a sacred moment. Dallas Jenkins, the series creator, responded calmly, "People are free to doubt, and that's okay. But those of us who were there, we know what we lived." He added quietly, "I don't need anyone to believe me, I just bear witness." Jonathan Roumie also spoke out, simply but firmly. It wasn't a performance. Sometimes God chooses the most unexpected places to reveal himself, and that set was one of them. The impact didn't end when the cameras stopped rolling. Many cast and crew members later shared how the experience had changed their personal lives. Some spoke of family reconciliations, others of returning to faith, baptisms, even emotional healing. Was it acting? Was it a miracle? Or something in between, where art and divinity briefly touched? Whatever it was, the Last Supper scene in The Chosen now carries something no camera could ever fully capture. The mark of a presence that transcends art itself. And perhaps that's why it became unforgettable. If this story moved you, don't keep it to yourself. Like, comment below, and share it with someone who needs to hear this message today. And of course, subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss what's coming next. May God bless your life. And until next time,